Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast. I am Pierce Dietrich. You can follow me on Twitter at RaceForThePrize, and you can also go to my website, racefortheprize.com. The link is below, and you can get this spreadsheet for free. The sheets are going to be free. I don't know when I'm going to always be able to do the sheets. I have some of them done already and kind of cooked up, and it just depends on when I'm going to have time and if I can get some practice data into them. But I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how committed I can be. And so the best that I can do for you to help you, which I think I have been doing for about a decade now, is to just give it to you for free. And if there's a week where I'm too busy and I can't do it, it's fine. You're not out any money. You're not out any money. Hopefully now that I keep saying the word free at racefortheprize.com, change that to raceforfreetheprize.com. And if I keep saying free, then maybe you'll stop hitting me with the dislikes, although it doesn't really matter. I don't think it actually probably helps the video's algorithm when I get the dislikes, but it is strange that all of a sudden I'm just getting hammered with dislike. This guy is the worst. He's the worst. Oh, did you say hit this free now? Like. Okay, thank you. Great, whatever. Today we're talking about Kyle Busch and the age-old debate of can you play Kyle Busch at 14,500 in a race that doesn't feature very many laps. The old school listeners to this podcast that have been with me through thick and thin, I very much appreciate you. Remember that I recorded a Kyle Busch podcast 2019 at racefortheprize.com and said you just play him. And that was the fact then. Things have changed through the 2020 COVID season, 2021. It didn't become as clear. It didn't become as consistent that you could just jam in Kyle Busch and then take the punts. Other drivers elevated. His equipment kind of went down a little bit. And so there is now a debate. And I'm going to carry out the debate. And I'm going to honestly carry out the debate. And I'm going to do so with deductive reasoning and evidence. We are not going to just I'm not playing Kyle Busch because everybody else is playing him. And then going backwards and trying to find some reason to ex post facto explain how I got there. That's not right. And I'm not going to just jam in Kyle Busch and then look for reasons. What we're going to do is go through the information and see where does it lead us. I'm going to educate myself and hopefully educate you, and hopefully we'll get an answer and have a better idea for this Las Vegas race. Now, just as it was in the past, and it will be in the future, whatever decision we come to today and even see the results, that could change throughout the season. So let's just lay things down. We know that Kyle Busch, greatest truck series driver of all time. We know he switched teams. New crew chief Brian Patty has jumped down. That could be a plus. That could be a minus. We have seen him win with plenty of different crew chiefs in the recent seasons. Yes, the Rudy Fugle glory days are over, but he was still winning races and being optimal with Ben Bayshore and Danny Stockman. They're still getting it done. Not as consistent. That could have been equipment-wise. Brian Patty is no slouch to cup racing, but now he has found himself down in the truck series. I don't think Kyle Busch would bring in Brian Patty if he didn't have all the confidence in the world in Brian Patty. Kyle Busch pretty much left JGR maybe not on the best of terms. And you can tell that Kyle Busch is absolutely as hungry as ever. And you take that idea and you factor that in. Again, this is a little bit more of context narrative driven, but we can get into the data. But if you're arguing for playing Kyle Busch, I think Brian Patty is a plus. I believe Kyle Busch is driven. He's motivated. Not only is he running a triple header this weekend, he's doing a triple duty with his new teams in his hometown. He's showing up in his hometown with his new teams, driving for Chevy for the first time in God knows how long, 2008, whatever it was, 7, 6. It's important. It's significant. He wants to win. And really the best way that you can assure that you win is you stay out front the entire time. Kyle Busch is no idiot. You're no idiot. You want to run in the pack at Las Vegas? You want to run 3rd or 4th at Las Vegas? You want to restart 3rd or 4th or 5th at Las Vegas? The only way that you are going to assure yourself that you're winning races is you need to be out front and stay out front. You need to make sure that truck is dialed in and ready to go for this race. And Brian Patty knows damn well he better have the best truck that he has ever built. Now, he hasn't built a lot of trucks, but Brian Patty is a top-tier crew chief. Now, provided mixed results, but he's had mixed funding and drivers that were mercurial. But I think from that perspective, you're checking out the box towards yes. So let's swing over and look a little bit more at some of the reasons of why you don't play him. And they're obvious in that he hasn't been optimal recently. And we'll just simply look at last year's Las Vegas race to demonstrate the problem playing Kyle Busch. At $15,000, he had a very fast truck, he scored a lot of points, he finished almost near the front, but he was not optimal. He returned a 3.6x, but because people will see that number and really freak out. Because you really have to explain this. Because, again, a lot of people are just playing him because he's Kyle Busch, and a lot of people are just fading him because he's not Kyle Busch, and they don't actually dig any layers deep into, well, why does it work? Why doesn't it work? So that's what we're going to do here, is provide the actual process and analysis of here's what has to happen, here's what for him to work and not work. So the 3.6x is going to worry a lot of people. But even when Kyle Busch was optimal every single week in 2019, he was barely hitting 5. But that worked because there just wasn't very many points. And the other expensive drivers weren't scoring very many points. There's not very many laps. So this is just Truck Series DFS in general. There aren't very many laps. Okay, so that takes away the hog points right there. And those tend to go towards the expensive drivers. So that limits upside for not just Kyle Busch, but it limits upside for the elite drivers if they can't get hog points. We'll get more into that in a second. 2, in these races where for the most part, the good trucks are going to qualify where they finish. And the bad trucks, except for the value play that comes through. So you don't have a lot of place differential gainers a lot of times. A lot of times the expensive trucks just don't score any points either. So on a weekend like in 2019 where Kyle Busch is 5x, so is all the other $9,000 to $10,000 drivers. They're all at 5x as well. And so he just ends up being the better play because no one on the board scores any points. And his raw point total carries the day. That's how he can work. So don't overreact to that 3.6. Now, here's the real thing that you have to dive into. You can see there's not a lot here. You got Chandler Smith gets his, Kyle Busch gets his hog points, which are fast laps, last lap points, dominator points. You insert your own pronouns, fine by me. John Hunter Nemechek. Now, there's an interesting angle to that, which we'll get to in a second. But you got 3 guys that get these points. Not a lot of opportunities for other drivers to sneak into the optimal lineup. There's not very many points. It makes it tough for this expensive guy. But here's the trick. Kyle Busch, 7 hog points, 8 hog points. Clearly up front the entire race. Average rank position of 3rd. Pretty impressive. He's right there. So you step back and say, well, how hard would it have been for him to lead another run or him to just double these numbers? And the answer is not very hard at all. And if you look at, and I've got it on another screen here, hog points at intermediate tracks. So right here, no one gets more than, 16? Which is pretty low, where we get 3 drivers that split them up evenly. How difficult is it for one driver or just one of these guys to fall out? And it's not. You look back at Homestead, intermediate track, Truck Series 2022, Ty Majeski gets 36 points. If Kyle Busch gets 36 hog points here, more than likely going to be optimal. Now, you say, well, I don't know about that. You got to do your math. Wrong. I don't have to do my math because if we add 16 hog points here, we're taking them away here. And when you take them away here, Smith drops down and Busch squeezes in. That's how that works. It is a zero-sum game, and you have to picture it that way. Can Kyle Busch get 40? Yes. Is that enough to get him in? Yes, because it knocks other guys out. Those are points that they cannot accrue that allow them to squeeze in. That's why he won't be necessarily as efficient, and he won't necessarily crush the scoreboard. But one of the things that goes subtly ignored is as this goes up to 5, this drops down to 5. And his raw point total is better than his raw point total. People often ignore that. They neglect that. And it's because they just say, I'm playing Kyle Busch because it's Kyle Busch, and I'm fading Kyle Busch because everybody's playing him. Well, maybe we go through the data and decide where we want to be on this. Heaven forbid a statistical-based game, we look at the statistics instead of just looking at their names. But hey, you know what? You do you. I'm going to look at the numbers and try to explain. Now, so I'm arguing that he can get the 40, but also clearly in this example, we can see in these short stages, and you get cautions before the end of stages, and you get cautions all throughout stage 3 that bleed some of the fast laps away. Then, yeah, it opens the door for these scenarios where Kyle Busch cannot run away first. If the race is green, but you have to project a green truck race, which is probably not the best idea. But if you were to project a green truck race, I would say, yeah, go heavily on Kyle Busch. Because of the cautions, it could get a little hairy. It could get a little scary. But again, going back to this idea of 40 fantasy points, let's just look at the last intermediate track from last season. I got this on another screen, so I'm sorry I can't put it in front of you. Homestead, Ty Majeski, 36. Kansas, the one before that, John Hunter Nemechek, 40. Let's go to the race before that. I mean, you could argue Nashville, whatever. 33 for Zane Smith, 37 for Ryan Preece. Maybe you don't like that comparison. That's fine by me. You go back to Charlotte before that. Hostover had 29, 18 from Smith, so cutting it close there. Texas, all spread out, and that's kind of just the way Texas races in the Truck Series. So you can overreact to that, whatever. That one groove, that slick groove. Texas is always just a wild race in the Truck Series. Sometimes it's benign, but if we're thinking about caution splitting up the hog points, Texas is at the top of my list. Just the way that it is. You go back to the first Kansas race, Zane Smith, 58 hog points. Darlington, John Hunter Nemechek, 32 hog points. Let's go to, and then the Las Vegas race here. So, does it happen every week? No. Can it happen? Yes. Who's it most likely to happen for? Maybe like the greatest Truck Series driver of all time. Now, I made a point that who are the 3 hogs here? And I just mentioned hogs, Dominator, whatever your pronoun is. They were all KBM trucks. I think we get this idea that KBM had kind of taken a step back. They didn't really. But regardless of that, the real story is Kyle Busch did not destroy the field because his teammates were very good. The Kyle Busch stable, the drivers were very strong, very good equipment, with very good crew chiefs. His competition had stepped up. Kyle Busch stepping on the throat of ThorSport, not really a problem. Kicking GMS and the gonads, not a big deal. Choking out front row, go for it. But Kyle Busch versus Kyle Busch, it's a little hairy. Never really had that situation. And then we did it occasionally where there was somebody decent in a sidecar against Kyle Busch, and you got to see like, maybe Kyle Busch can't run away with this race. Small sample size. But we really got to see that last year. Now, why does that matter? Well, if you're arguing for Kyle Busch being a play, his team this year, we don't really know what the funding's going to be, but we know that the talent of his drivers probably not the best. Probably not the greatest class of Kyle Busch Motorsports, arguably the worst. And on a new team with new crew chiefs, going through a lot of changes, and factoring in all these changes, Kyle Busch is getting most of the resources. Chase Purdy. Chase Purdy ain't Chandler Smith. He ain't John Hunter Nemechek. I gotta fix that. Nicholas. Stupid name stuff. We'll fix that later. Now his price is not gonna show up, but I'll fix that later too. Life doing the spreadsheet. Like, these are the small little things that you gotta do constantly over and over. You wonder why I fuss and I gripe and I melt down. Like, dude, you just changed one name. Yeah, but there's 3 other sheets that I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to make a mental note of those changes. And like, it's just, never mind. Nobody wants to hear me complain. Who's our other Kyle Busch driver? Chase Purdy, and who else was the other guy? Why am I not seeing it? Does he only have 2 trucks entered this week? Doesn't, but it says Jack Wood's not racing this week? Check with another name. No. Guess not. So it goes, so it be, so it will, so it has. Anyway, one of the reasons why Kyle Busch was not killing the field was because his team was good. It's not going to be the case. So that's the solid argument for Kyle Busch. The argument against, maybe you don't believe in Brian Patty. Maybe you don't think that Richard Childress is coming in with a bunch of funding. I think he is. And I think that Kyle Busch would not have joined this team if he had not gotten a pretty good deal, or at least the best deal. And I think they're going to be fun, and I think the resources are going to him. We don't know that for sure. So you could use that as a reason to fade. You can also point to the fact that, we got Ross Chastain, we got Zane Smith, we got John Hunter Nemechek. All these guys got to do is cycle into the lead for a little bit. Yeah, that's a decent point. I could see Zane Smith cycling into the lead. I have a hard time these days believing that Ross Chastain is going to cycle into the lead in that niche truck. I believe he can run in the 10th place, 5th place, but this is not full-time Truck Series Ross Chastain. If I'm thinking about the perspective of some of these guys are going to siphon the points away, I just don't see Chastain as one of those guys. I do see it as Zane Smith. I have my questions about, just because Dave Gillen rebranded as Tricon and has this TRD influence, I think it's just Dave Gillen all over again. And this team has switched from Crosley to Gillen to, front row connections, the Fords. I mean, they used to be Toyotas once upon a time. Now they're back to being Toyotas. I think this is just more of a branding thing of Toyota just not wanting to get locked out of the series. They want to have something in the series. And John Hunter Nemechek is the TRD guy, so he'll get into that truck every once in a while. But this is not going to be like a KBN truck by any means. Maybe it's better than a front row Joe truck, but 10-7, I don't see it happening. Majeski really turned it on last year. He could be a threat. But just like if you're making an argument that Ty Majeski is going to run away from Kyle Busch, and that's why Kyle Busch is not going to be optimal, that's a tough argument. Ben Rhodes is going to run away from. These are tough arguments. That any of these guys, they never beat Kyle Busch before. They never dominated races over Kyle Busch before. They never hauled points over Kyle Busch before. And you think now, when he is at home running a triple duty race weekend with his brand new team, that he's going to let Christian Eckes and a freaking Bill McAnally Napa embarrass him? That's a tough sell. So, again, there is the possibility of cautions. There's the possibility of Kyle Busch penalties. But we have also seen him overcome some of these penalties as well. And again, I don't want to take the perspective of, all right, I've got my decision and I want to go backwards and try to find ways to support it. Because that's often like, I'm not playing Kyle Busch and like, oh, that's right, he gets penalties every once in a while. Everyone gets penalties every once in a while. Does that mean you don't play people? And I get that penalties really hurt really expensive drivers. That is a fair point. And I don't think it could be dismissed out of hand. But, when you start to try to predict that a guy's going to wreck or that a guy is going to speed on pit road, I mean, you really open a big box of worms, can of worms, in your process when it's fine to have that in the back of your mind. But to have that as a central point of debate, I don't think that it's very beneficial to you in the long run, probably not even in the short run. It is a fair point, but we need more points. A lot of this is going to depend on the next thing is, all right, so the other part of the debate with Kyle Busch is if you were to play Kyle Busch, and we're only asking probably, let's see, if we project him for a win, and we give him 40 hog points, which is double what he had, but that's just basically another run, that's 6x. That's optimal. I don't care. There's just the only way that doesn't work is if we get some really expensive guys. Absolutely, we need a handful of them starting in the back. And so he's able to get his hog points, and then they're able to compete at lower prices because they get like 25, 30 place differential points, and they end up being, they score just as many raw points but a little more efficient. But I don't see any other way. If they're not getting 20 place differential points, they're finishing up front. Like let's say Zane Smith finishes second. That's 3.7. So he would need like 20 place differential points. And that's a lot. I mean, he's got to really screw up qualifying. And he's still not a better point per dollar play. So just to give you some perspective right there on how that's got to play out. My mouse is, all right, mouse is crapping out on me. Now, we also need these guys at the bottom to make something work. So let's see if we can find some of these guys at the bottom who could possibly make things work. While I do it, I'll show you. All right. Now I got to change his name in this sheet. Now there's a way that I could fix this ahead of time, and I will fix this ahead of time. But these are just the small little things in my life that I deal with. And you're like, oh, it's nothing. Yeah, but they add up because sheets connect to sheets, and there's another sheet that reads another sheet and a data point. And I want everything to be perfect for you. Although it's free, I shouldn't want to make everything perfect for you, but I do. This is the service industry. You have to provide service, good service. That's what brings people back. And getting the names right and having not errors show up, it means something. All right. We're probably looking down in this range. You know what Timmy Hill is going to give you. Maybe not enough savings, but he's going to start in the back, run it around in the back, hopefully get a solid finish. 19th after he survives all the chaos. He could easily run into that chaos. Dean Thompson came through last year. He was 4,600 in that race. Much better equipment, I would argue, this time, though. Running that Tricon car. Truck. That could be a problem, though. Sometimes you worry about giving these good drivers or these young drivers better equipment. They get a little more aggressive. You're like, I kind of wish that you were still just in your Timmy Hill truck and you were playing it a lot more safe. Something to think about. But Dean Thompson could come through. Probably is going to qualify a little bit better, though, I would imagine. Hard to trust Roper. Hard to trust GTG. Young. So here, I guess this is where we're going to be. The Rayums are a mess, and those are more of the extreme punts. We've been here before, if you've been around since 2019. But the times that the Rayum punts do work are often the Kyle Busch races where you're absolutely forced. Gun to my head, I would much rather take a young truck than a Rayum truck. Now, I want to look through the data before I make that kind of a ridiculous statement, so because that could be absolutely wrong. Young's been going in the wrong direction. Rayum really hasn't been going in any direction. I guess the more of the question is, has Young dropped down to the point where it's worse than, or at least close to Rayum? I wouldn't think so. And I'm wondering who I could look up. So Fogelman running in the back third. It's about 25th place running position based on the Dietrich data. Dean Thompson, that's Nice. That's Nice. Chris Wright, there he is, probably running for Young, back third, running around close to 30th. Same thing for Matt Mills, close to 30th. So if you had to ask me, Young used to be on the closer to 20th. Now they're much closer to 30th, but they're back 20s. Whereas Rayum is on the other side of the 30s. So I'll take Matt Mills and his experience, Spencer Boyd and his experience. I think that's where you would end up going. You don't really feel happy about it. You guys see where they qualify, see what some of the practice laps look like. I think really one thing that you don't want to happen one thing that whether we want it to happen or not, what's going to determine whether Kyle Busch is on the board is if someone up here messes up in qualifying. If several of them qualify really poorly, that really hurts the Kyle Busch play. If they all qualify about where they're supposed to, that means these guys will all qualify where they're supposed to. And that means through attrition, one or two of them are going to jump 10 spots. And then that opens up the value that you can play Kyle Busch. I think where I am absolutely leaning at the moment is you play Kyle Busch. Now, again, it all comes down to qualifying. Practice will play a little bit of it, but honestly, it's qualifying. It's an intermediate track that can go out there and turn laps as long as your truck doesn't fail. We've got enough data on these teams and these drivers to know what they're capable of doing based on previous seasons and to project them. Practice will help make the picture a little bit more clear. But really, end of the day, the Kyle Busch decision is going to come down to the qualifying and also the strength of the field. I would argue the strength of the field is not that great. Dane Smith is probably the one that worries you the most. Could he go out there and lead a bunch of laps? He absolutely could. Maybe Ty Majeski, but the rest, like, it just doesn't terrify me. But if you're in the camp of playing Kyle Busch, you're worried about qualifying. If you are leaning towards fading Kyle Busch, then you're hoping one of these guys is in a handful of these guys, because you're going to probably need two of them to score around 20 place differential points. The value is going to be what it is. I mean, it's always the same thing for Truck Series. Enough of these guys are going to sit in the back, and they're going to move forward through attrition. Now, one of the other things that could happen, this would be more off the board, you could possibly get big place differential plays from these guys, but if there's enough chaos, you get three of these dudes, which Matt Mills, Spencer Boyd, Wallace Allen, Chris Wright. I don't know about Poole. What did Poole do last year in terms of average finish running for this team? I'm pretty sure they were slugs. You know, the days of him having good results at On Point Racing are way, 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 way past. If I'm looking on another screen here for what Poole did with this team, he did plenty of races with them. Yeah, I'm going way low. Jeez. He did get a 24th place finish at Homestead, but I would have to look at the context surrounding that and see what team he was with for that. But he does have quite a few races outside the top 30. You'd want to look more into the data and look more into GTG's racing results to get an idea. But this was not a strong team in the past. Roper, not really. Now you're getting to the point where you're not really even saving that much money. These guys are still all going to be on the board. Brett Holmes was optimal in the last Las Vegas race at 7,700. He started last. Had a pretty solid race. Talked about that in the previous podcast. So that could happen too. There isn't an answer. There are no solutions. There's only trade-offs. But where I would lean before practice and before qualifying, given the data and the situation I laid out, I would go with Kyle Busch. And I understand that the people, I think his ownership is going to be high. But I'm not going to fade the number one. So great. Well, he's going to be high for a reason. Now he's going to be high because of his popularity of his name, but the popularity of his name is built based on the success of his career. So I just don't like to get in the habit. And this is me, and I could be completely wrong with my process. And other people may absolutely disagree. But I don't like to fade the best player on a slate just because everyone is playing them. If you want to fade the best player on the slate and have specific reasons, other than, well, everybody's playing him. Well, what else? He's still the best player of the slate. And if everybody plays him, then everybody scores a bunch of points. And then you got 5 more picks to try to separate from them. What's the argument? But everybody's playing him. Yeah, but if he goes off, then you're toast. Yeah, but he's got to go off. Well, he's the best player on the slate. He's more likely to go off than anybody else. Yeah, but everybody's like, what are we doing? I hate that argument. You got to find a reason. Now, maybe in practice it doesn't look good. Maybe he's not comfortable with his truck. Maybe that'll get you off. Maybe the qualifying situation will help provide the ledge or the wedge that leads you down the leverage route. That is okay. But you know, I am a process guy. I am a disciplined guy. Also, it just doesn't make it. I'm going to talk for 30 minutes. I got to talk about something. I can't just say, yo, just do it. So there's that to it as well. But this is just what I do. I go back and forth in my head. So right now, I'm leaning Kyle Busch. Will I stay in this direction? I think I probably will. But I am open-minded to seeing how his practice laps look, how comfortable his team looks. I would love to hear some interviews with him, maybe even get some Brian Patty information. I also really want to see his qualifying effort because he may not necessarily show us everything we want to see in the short practice run, but when he has to go out there and lay a hot lap, let's see, A, if he can do it, and B, if the truck can do it. If both those boxes are checked, yeah, then you feel pretty comfortable taking Kyle Busch in this race. All right. Thanks for joining me, guys. Hope you enjoyed this one. Racefortheprize.com. You can get access to the free fantasy NASCAR and F1 sheets when I do them. And obviously, I've already done one for the week. So I'll get them up to you and try to do my best to keep providing content and helping you out. You're welcome.